Hey everybody, you know what time it is. While doing my researches for other cases, I always come across several cases each month that are too short to be their own video, but definitely worth talking about. I'm sure you know how it works by this point, so let's get into it. So here we have, man beats neighbor to death with bag full of Pokémon cards. Last year, on August 2nd, out in Sheffield, a city in South Yorkshire, England, a 31-year-old man named Andrew Hogg was seen attacking his neighbor, a man named Simon Wilkinson, in front of other residents after a brief altercation. One of the neighbors claimed that Andrew walked up to Simon's residence, screaming, "You called me a fucking nonce. Come out here and fight like a man." Apparently, nonce is a sex offender, mainly against kids. I had to look that up. When Simon came out of his house, Andrew started punching him and kicking him, knocking him to the ground and stomping on him. He then proceeded to beat him over the head with a big bag full of 5 metal boxes containing Pokémon cards. He then, wanting to make sure that Simon was definitely dead, slammed him over the head with a large piece of wood. It's stated that Andrew had briefly left the scene, but soon returned to end Simon's life in what he thought was an act of mercy, while in what the judge called a deluded state. When caught by the police, Andrew told the officers that he got carried away, in his own words, and murdered the man in cold blood. He told them that he felt the attack with the Pokémon cards was so brutal that he needed to make sure that he put him out of his misery. Andrew apparently, unsurprisingly, suffers from a psychotic disorder. He hadn't been taking his medication for some time at this point, self-medicating with weed instead. He later went on to plead guilty to murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 17 years, recommending he return to Rampton Secure Hospital where he had previously been held. He had already been convicted multiple times for violent behavior, 7 times to be exact, in various different situations, including one where he attacked an emergency services worker. The judge told the public to be wary of the dangers of self-medicating. This case is a stark reminder of the dangers of cannabis use, particularly with someone with such a complex mental history as his, she said. So here we've got, inmates at Oklahoma jail subjected to torture by hearing Baby Shark on loop, lawsuit says. Here we have a truly cartoonishly evil case in which prison inmates were forced to stand in painful positions for hours on end, all while the children's song Baby Shark played on loop. Baby Shark is a nursery rhyme type song that exploded in popularity back in 2019. Even if you didn't have kids, it was hard to avoid spotting the mascot from time to time at least. I can't play the song here, but the lyrics play out like this. Baby Shark, doo-doo, doo-doo. Baby Shark, doo-doo, doo-doo. Baby Shark, doo-doo, doo-doo. Baby Shark. It isn't the most complicated song. So back in 2019, inmates in this Oklahoma jail were subjected to what has been called cruel and inhumane punishment, where they were forced into standing stress positions while the song would endlessly loop. This punishment would often last for hours at a time. A federal civil rights lawsuit was put together as a result, describing the punishment routine as torture events. The defendants on the lawsuit were listed as the Oklahoma County Sheriff Tommy Johnson III, 2 former jail officers, the Board of County Commissioners, and the jail trust. The lawsuit says that the defendants failed to properly train and supervise the officers as they blasted Baby Shark all up in that place. It said that the mistreatment from these officers was well known amongst the supervisors and no action was ever taken to stop them. One of the victims, going by Mitchell, was pulled from his cell by a few officers at around midnight one day. He was thrown into a room, forced into what is called a standing stress position, while his hands were handcuffed behind his back, and then forced to remain that way for almost 4 hours while the jailers blasted Baby Shark on loop. The lawsuit says, Mitchell was forced to listen to the song over and over while physically restrained in the attorney visitation room. The volume of the song was so loud that it was reverberating down the hallways. 2 other inmates, going by Basco and Hedrick, were also forced into the same kind of situation back in 2019, according to the lawsuit. Another man, named Foreman, was forced into the same position, but luckily wasn't forced to listen to the song. He was, however, kicked in the back and slammed into the wall while being spit on by an officer, though. It was further noted that the plaintiffs posed no threats to the officers during any of these occurrences. The lawsuit actually officially said that, quote, the music can be hard on the ears. An actual clinical psychologist said, Certain pitches hit the auditory receptors in ways that are physiologically painful. These are high-pitched tones and screechy elongated sounds like nails across a chalkboard. So I guess you have scientific proof that Baby Shark is annoying. News media attempted to reach out to the defendants in this case, but they received no comment. Their lawyer refused to comment as well. Then, in October of 2020, 2 of the former jail employees and their supervisor were smacked with charges of misdemeanor cruelty when the prosecutors were able to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the torture took place. It was unfortunate that I could not find a felony statute to fit this scenario. I would have preferred filing a felony on this behavior, said the district attorney. The officers who were charged ended up resigning, and their supervisor went ahead and retired. One of the plaintiffs, Basco, was released from prison after this took place, although he reoffended and ended up back in jail in 2022. He passed away in police custody, with the medical examiner determining that he had died of an accidental fentanyl overdose, something his lawyer finds very suspicious. Last month, in April of 2023, the former jail guards in the lawsuit were finally sentenced. After pleading no contest to the charges against them, they got away with really nothing but fines and probation in the end. Here we have one of my favorite headlines of all time. Pure evil blackbird named Derek terrorizing Yorkshire village and attacking children. Alright, so apparently there's a little blackbird that has become somewhat of a cult icon out in Rossington near Doncaster out in the UK. Some people, though, say that there's a dark side to this black bird. They say that he loves to steal food and terrorize kids in this South Yorkshire community. Apparently everyone in this community knows about this bird, who they have named Derek, and recognize his antics. He quickly became somewhat of a celebrity. Back in 2019, Derek even got his own Facebook page where people would post pictures and updates about him and all of his shenanigans. It appears that all the fame has gone to Derek's head recently, with multiple headlines coming forth calling him a nuisance and an utter menace. One local mother told a harrowing tale about how Derek had viciously attacked her children, leaving the family, in her own words, petrified. She added, "It comes to something when kids can't even go into their own garden without being petrified because of that bloody bird Derek dive-bombing them and trying to attack them. So, to whoever owns that horrible thing, if you want to try to domesticate a bird like that, then keep it at home because it hurts my kids. There will be hell to pay, and I don't care who that offends. The thing is a menace, attacking kids in the school playground, on the street, in their own garden. If it was any other animal, it would have been put to sleep following the first attack on a child." This woman wasn't the only one to come out and try to cancel Derek, the feathered fiend. Another local resident said that he saw Derek viciously attack a child in the street and that he was forced to step in and intervene. He described Derek as pure evil, saying, "Is this the horrible thing that was attacking a young boy a few weeks ago opposite Baths? I had to stop my car in the middle of the road to help him. That thing was pure evil." Derek does have his allies and loyal supporters, though. Some other parents in the community say that Derek is actually a little angel and that their children would often give snacks to him and play with him. One of these mothers said, "He landed on my son a few years ago when he was walking to the bus stop. I think he just wanted a piggyback." Another gave her testimony, saying, "My daughter has told me a few times that Derek has caused all the kids to go outside at playtime at school. She said most of the kids love him." Another begged the angry folks out there to leave Derek alone, saying that he wouldn't harm a fly, adding, "Poor Derek. I know the bird. Please leave it alone. It means no harm. Many thanks." The controversy around Derek isn't only divisive within the community, but within families as well. The cancellation of Derek is tearing families apart, with one mother writing that one of her kids who was attacked by Derek hates him, while the other child loves him. She said, "Derek was a regular in our garden. My young son hates him as he scratched his face. My daughter loves him. During lockdown, he was sat on her arm for well over an hour." Derek, when pressed for comment, did not respond. Florida man arrested after disrespectfully consuming roommate's key lime pie. Where would one of these videos be without a Florida man case? Well, here we've got one where an elderly man out in Fort Myers went out of his way to steal a tasty treat from his roommate. This roommate has done his best to find his mother's favorite dessert for her birthday, a key lime pie. He locked it away in his fridge, keeping it there for the time being. He told his roommate, David Powelson, that under no circumstance was he to eat this pie. David, however, is an asshole. He apparently lost all control over his willpower. He simply couldn't go on living his life knowing that this perfectly good pie was in the refrigerator. One Friday afternoon at around 5 p.m., David sat down in the living room with the pie. His roommate, the owner of the pie, couldn't believe his eyes. Not only was David eating the pie he specifically told him not to touch, but he was eating the entire thing, leaving not even a piece behind. "Why didn't you just save me one piece?" the roommate exclaimed in agony as he confronted David. An epic showdown took place, and David decided that he was left with no choice but to de-escalate the situation. He went into the kitchen, filled up 2 glasses of cold water, and dumped them all over his roommate's head. This roommate then called the police. The cops responded to the call, heading out to the home. When they arrived, the victim told the police all about the pie dispute and the assault with the water. The police called the whole thing a physical domestic dispute. They did note, however, that the victim didn't actually suffer any injuries during the altercation and that only water was thrown on him. Even so, David Powelson was taken into custody and charged with 1 felony count of first-degree aggravated battery on a person of age 65 or older. Under Florida laws, anyone convicted on that charge could face up to 30 years in prison and a maximum fine of up to $10,000. Under Florida laws, anyone convicted on that charge could face up to 30 years in prison and a maximum fine of up to $10,000. Best case scenario, anyone convicted on those charges is subject to a minimum of 3 years in prison. But he's really only going to get convicted if the prosecution can prove that he caused bodily harm, disability, or disfigurement, or if they can manage to get the water to count as a deadly weapon. He'll probably be fine, but the pie will never come back. And now, police want to know who put crack pipe vending machines on Long Island. Here we have a very weird case in which the police are trying to find out who in the hell is responsible for installing a bunch of crack pipe vending machines all over the Coram area of Long Island in New York. After receiving a good number of complaints from various residents over the course of a weekend, the police came out to find that, lo and behold, there were 3 of these machines out there. The machines were labeled as pens, but their actual intended usage was blatantly obvious to anyone who actually purchased one. A city councilman said, "It is not illegal to sell the pens and it is not illegal to sell a pipe, but they are considered drug paraphernalia and they were being dispensed from a machine that was installed illegally per town code." The communications director for the town of Brookhaven said that the machines were actually repurposed tampon dispensers. 2 of the machines were found on public streets, while the 3rd was found outside of an apartment complex. The police department came out and removed the illegally installed machines. They then turned to the public to ask them for help in identifying who might have set them up. As of now, the incident is still being investigated, so the cops haven't really placed a numerical value on what kind of fine might be appropriate. The town supervisor doesn't know whether or not there are more of these machines out there, saying, "We are working with the Suffolk County Police Department to identify more locations and will cooperate fully to find those responsible and prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law." And now, family wants answers after man eaten alive by bedbugs in county jail, attorney says. Now we have a bizarre story in which a family attorney out in Atlanta, Georgia, said that a man died while in police custody after being eaten alive by insects and bedbugs. According to the attorney, Michael D. Harper, the man, LaShawn Thompson, was locked up in the Fulton County Jail for 3 months before he was eventually found unresponsive in his jail cell. He had quite obviously passed away in there. The conditions in his cell were, let's say, much less than ideal. Harper said, "What Mr. Thompson was housed in was not fit for a diseased animal. He did not deserve this." Mr. Thompson had been arrested on a misdemeanor battery charge back in June of 2022. Once he was thrown into jail, he ended up getting placed into the psychiatric wing once the officials determined that he had somewhat severe mental health issues. His family was even able to obtain records that showed that both the detention officers and the medical staff knew very well that his health was rapidly deteriorating and did absolutely nothing to give him any medical aid or otherwise help him out. They literally watched his health decline until he died, the family later stated. One detention officer reportedly refused to give him CPR because he was, in his own words, freaked out upon seeing the state of the body. Thompson had been chewed up by bed bugs and other insects to the point where the body was in a horrific state. The attorney suggests that, due to the severe neglect, someone has to be held responsible for this. In fact, he feels that, given the reprehensible state of the jail cells, the whole building probably needs to go, saying, Someone has to be held accountable for his death. The Fulton County Jail must be closed and replaced. The sheriff's office didn't want to respond to any request for comments. As of where we are now, this case has yet to come to any sort of conclusion. Thompson's family and attorney are still pushing for action. And now, Massachusetts woman protests wrongful eviction by releasing swarm of bees on police. Here we've got a case that's undoubtedly pretty weird. A woman in Massachusetts was charged with multiple counts of assault and battery after she unleashed a hell swarm of bumblebees on some police who were trying to serve an eviction. It wasn't even her eviction. The police officers had arrived at a local residence to serve a court-ordered eviction in October of 2022. They were met with local protesters supporting black homeowners. Shortly after, a 55-year-old woman, Rory Woods, appeared before them. Rory, who doesn't even live there, showed up in a beekeeper suit with a trailer full of bees. She jumped out, ran into the trailer, and started shaking and jostling the beehives, creating chaos. She released hundreds and hundreds of bees upon the officers. An official for the county said, "Never in all my years leading the Hampton County Sheriff's Civil Process Division have I seen something like this. I hope that these out-of-county protesters will reconsider using such extreme measures in the future because they will be charged and prosecuted." Rory was thrown into handcuffs when she was told that several officers on the scene were allergic to bees. Several of the officers had already been stung as well. Her response was, simply, "Oh, you're allergic? Good." Rory is now facing 7 felonies and 1 misdemeanor. Neither she or her lawyer would respond for comment. One officer ended up in the hospital but made a full recovery. Rory would have faced much harder charges if the situation had gotten any worse. Once again, thank you for watching my video, and a special thanks to everyone who sent in suggestions for this month's video. Both the Baby Shark story, the Pokemon card story, and the Missouri story were all sent in just right before I was ready to get this video compiled, so that was perfect timing. If you found the video interesting, please give it a like, it helps out in the algorithm, leave a comment if you want to talk about something, and subscribe if you want to see more. Follow me on social media if you want, I do stuff there. And if you want to support the channel even further, I have a Patreon account which I always keep down in the description below. There you can see videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Speaking of which, shout out to the top patrons. We've got Anna B, Sunrider, Gabrielle Tansick, Lee aka Crust, Emilia Morales, Minnie Tina, Ron Murillo, Travis Billings, Lettuce, Jason Whitehurst, Lord Fool, Jim Dowell, Kimmy Leffel, Melina Lee Williams-Haas, Motaz Hawk, Impalato, Stephen Jamie Kramer, Max Sword Guy, Rain Noir, Pao Yang, April Diamond, Starfade, Astral, Angie, Rick of Work in Progress USA, Sass Johnson, Miriam McCurdy, Buttery Frankus, Jules Latona, Arctic Cat, Adrian Lawley, Marsh, Rinsenstein, Kim Peak, Lex Luthor, Lux Alpaca, Charity, Scoochie Main, Jackie, and Mark Barnett. You all deserve the very best. This has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.